Hello, my dear viewers. It's good to be with you. I'm Olga Demchuk, a researcher of the inner world of personality. I never stop being grateful to you. Thank you for supporting my channel. Today, I have prepared a topic for you: why we are unable to earn a decent living. You can take countless courses on how to start your own business, how to increase sales, invest your money somewhere, but often these things don't work because the problem with earning money is quite complex. Let's try to figure it out. I've prepared for you the 10 main points. Of course, there could be more, and I think you will add to them, but let's review them together once again. When we look at someone, we can often understand why they are not earning money. If you are even a little bit thoughtful, when you look at a person, you understand why they are earning money, or you understand why they are not earning, but it's much harder to look at yourself. The main reason why a person cannot earn money is the inability to manage their own emotions. Because earning money is connected to stress. Even if you are sitting at home knitting socks, your level of stress is completely different compared to if you were in a room with, say, 10 other women who are also knitting socks. You would have to interact with them, you would have to get there. You would need to reach that place and engage in communication with the person who is in charge of everything. So, you see, the amount of stress increases significantly. And many people who are unable to resolve their psychological issues make this choice. For example, they choose to do something at home on the computer. In this way, they are more or less able to function normally. But the inability to manage emotions blocks many opportunities for a person. When a person demands excessively sheltered conditions for themselves, in other words, conditions that are too ideal, this is when a person becomes fixated on themselves and they cannot understand that the world exists separately from them. In this case, they have a huge number of projections. So the main problem with being unable to endure or cope with emotions is projections. This is when the world is not separate. Everything is related to me. If another person has an angry expression, it means they're angry at me. If another person looks sad, it means they're sad because of me. In other words, any characteristic of this world is interpreted from the perspective of oneself, as if it somehow relates to me. Even scrolling through a feed where someone is asking for help becomes impossible, because there is a constant feeling of guilt that you didn't help, or an urge to help. The second point is the inability to set realistic goals when a person is focused on the ideal. By the way, take a look. On Friday, a video was released about the ideal self and its relationship with the real self. I mentioned this point, that the ideal self is like a crazy drill sergeant who sets unrealistic tasks every time, every day. Like, be better. You can do it, just do it. In other words, the ideal self is not guided by reality. It is simply dissatisfied and demands improvement. And when a person in business sets unrealistic goals, they never get the feeling of, I'm doing well. Everything they do always feels not good enough. And it's important for us to feel, I'm doing well. I've brought something to a logical conclusion. I've achieved some result, and I can say, I'm doing well. If we don't have the feeling of, I'm doing well, our enthusiasm starts to fade. That's why teachers, like, I go to sports practice, and there we're always being praised. For example, they give us a tough set of exercises, and when we complete them, they say, well done, keep going, you did great. So this well done really inspires a person. But with this praise, you also have to be careful. Because if someone is doing something wrong and you keep telling them well done, they'll never understand where they need to make changes. But let's return to unrealistic goals. If a person does not have a realistic understanding of themselves or the outside world, then the goals they set will be unrealistic and will constantly crash against the rocks of their own making. The third point, there is no discipline. Why is there no discipline? Discipline is not for children. A child is not capable of maintaining discipline. I'm talking about an infant. And for a child, discipline always feels like a prison because they want to have fun and relax. To have fun and relax. Remember yourself as a child when you wanted to go outside and play. Well, I don't know, maybe young people today don't play outside but play on the computer instead. In my childhood, the worst thing my mother could do was not let me go outside. And school was more of a duty and obligation, and I always did it because I had to. But this desire to rest and have fun is inherent in a child. And if a person is immature, they will perceive discipline as hard labor. And here you see is a rather interesting point. Very interesting. On the one hand, I need to set myself a manageable task. On the other hand, I must be disciplined enough to see it through. That is, discipline, first and foremost, should stop being perceived as punishment. You need to constantly remind yourself that you are doing this for yourself. The fourth point is the desire to be liked. I've observed this in people, including my clients. They are intelligent and have quite original ideas. But when they come into contact with potential partners, they are not able to negotiate. They cannot stand up for their point of view. They cannot express dissatisfaction. They cannot voice their own goals or even their own wishes because that will immediately be taken badly by the other person. If I agree with everything, if I avoid conflict, then everyone is going to like me, you know. But when everyone likes me, I end up missing out on my own opportunities. That is, I will keep adapting myself all the time. If there is this desire to be liked, then again, all the questions lead back to the ideal self. It has chosen this way of surviving, and I am liked by others, and others give me what I want. In other words, this is an immature position. Others give what they want, not what I give them. Fifth point, see things through to the end. I observe how some people start things, even when they have enthusiasm and discipline, but they don't finish them. To be able to finish what you start, look at all the previous points. This is a manageable task. It requires discipline. It involves systematically carrying out the objectives set. Seeing things through to the end is quite challenging for a person. Why is that? Because when we are fantasizing and making plans, it feels as if we're cutting through butter with a knife. All the traffic lights are green, everyone is helping us, everyone supports us, and we move forward as smoothly as a knife through butter. We fantasize about events as if they will unfold under ideal conditions. And so when we encounter obstacles, we don't know how to plan realistically. Facing difficulties, we lose our enthusiasm. And this constant desire to be entertained, it exists, even for some people in business. That is, as soon as it stops exciting me, that's it, I give it up. So, again, this comes back to the point about lacking discipline. Point 6. A biased attitude toward money. I frequently observe and notice how people who don't know how to generate wealth or earn a living speak disparagingly about those who can. There is so much bitter disdain and resentment, so much arrogant disgust in their every word. And you know, when you don't know how to earn money, you feel inferior next to those who do. The only way not to feel inferior is to devalue it. And a person convinces themselves so much that they don't need money, and that money is evil, and that only certain people earn it, that they actually start to believe it themselves. And there are these so-called saints who say, you know, I don't need money. And this attitude, it will block opportunities. That is, a person will stop seeing the world as a place where there are opportunities to earn. So it's important to sort out your attitude toward wealthy people. If there is, there shouldn't be civility either, for that matter. But always, for example, this is what I do. Whenever I see a person who has earned their wealth themselves, I always observe them closely and analyze what qualities enabled them to achieve this. And I pay attention to whether I have these qualities within myself. Chaos, a jumble of thoughts in the mind. Many people think they are thinking, but in reality, they are not truly thinking. They lack logic, or rather, they have their own kind of logic, but it is not aligned with reality. They may be able to reason quite successfully on their own, but when it comes to interacting with others, when they need to integrate someone else's system of coordinates, which is completely different from their own, they falter. So this mental flexibility is essential. Otherwise, you will only preach your own ideas, constantly trying to change something of your own, and you will find yourself in conflict with reality. And this is the lack of connection with the outside world. I would list this as the 8th point. Why? The external world is closed off from us. I remember very well the state I was in when I was working on my personal development, and at some point I realized that there were an enormous number of opportunities to earn money. You just have to take them, and they're right here. But before that, I didn't see them because I was too focused on myself. When a person is not overly fixated on themselves, they are unable to offer the world what the world is willing to pay them for. They simply offer what they can. Here, take it. But the real opportunity lies in being able to both unlock your own potential and at the same time provide what people actually need. That is the doorway through which you can realize yourself and earn money. That's how it is. Add your own points. What else do you consider to be obstacles to earning money? And now I will say goodbye to you, but before that, I'd like to invite you to the Unlocking Potential Business School, which will begin at the end of August. People love this school. It's going to be interesting. Come join us. See you soon.